Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. It's the Sleep Number biggest sale of the year. All beds on sale, up to 50% off the limited edition smart bed, plus free home delivery with the purchase of any smart bed. Ends Monday. All Sleep Number smart beds offer temperature solutions for your best sleep. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Hour 2, Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, working towards the weekend. Hope it's been a good one for you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Got a lot to do in this second hour. The Saints have just waived a quarterback and signed a defensive end. We'll talk about it 15 minutes from right now. I don't think the signing is significant at defensive end, but there could be some wheels in motion that may be significant at defensive end. We'll, again, do that in 15 minutes. I want to spend a little bit of time. We're not going in depth. We're not diving too deep. We're staying surface level, but it's time to start looking at matchups in college football. We spend a lot of time this time of year talking about individual teams, individual players, what teams are going to look like, but it's now time to start looking at matchups. And the SEC has mandated that its teams play one Power 4 conference team out of conference every year. So you got to do it. That's already baked in for Florida with Florida State, or Clemson with South Carolina with Clemson, or Kentucky with Louisville. That's already going to happen, but everybody else has got to kind of step outside, and a lot of that happens in September, and some are really doing so in a big way. Obviously, Texas going to Ohio State in the first game of the season is as big a matchup as you could ask for in the sport of college football, and I'm fascinated by this game. Ohio State had 14 players drafted off last year's team. 14. That's a lot. And they don't have a quarterback. Julian Sayin is battling with Lincoln Kleinholz. The thought is that Sayin will win that job, and it's a cush place to play quarterback. They've usually got a great offensive line. Jeremiah Smith's probably the best player in the entire country. Caleb Downs on that defense should be great, but they're missing a ton off that unit. And Texas is breaking in Arch Manning, and they've got a lot to replace on defense. Now, Colin Simmons comes back, and he's going to be the headliner there. We're very familiar with him from the recruiting days. But that's, I believe, a fairly even on-paper matchup that I would probably favor Ohio State in because of the building they're playing it in. But that's a monster game that I think if you're Texas, a loss makes things a little scary because you know you got to go to Athens, and that's not a lot of fun. And if you lose that game to Ohio State and you already lost it and you know that you got to go to Athens, that makes the high wire act that you've got to walk really, really tough for the next 3 months. Just is. So I'm fascinated by that one. I'm not as intrigued with Bama, Florida State. I would have been this time last year if you would have told me that was on the schedule, because Florida State was what everybody thought was kind of an emerging program under a coach who you feel differently about today than you did then. When Mike Norvell brings that Jordan Travis group along with that defense full of transfers, and they're awesome, and then they get left out of the playoff, you still feel like that's one of the premier programs in college football. And then they do what they did last year, which is unfathomable. Do you realize this? Let me lay this out last year for Florida State. You know they were bad. You know they were bad. Did you know they were this bad? There are 134 teams in D1 college football. 134. They were 132nd in total offense. There were 2 teams worse than them in total offense. They were 131st in scoring offense. There were 3 teams that scored less frequently than Florida State. And they were 116th in passing offense. Like, that is so hard to just wave your hands and fix. It just is. I don't know what Castellanos is going to have. They've got to be better than they were last year, but that's unthinkable that you could drop to those levels. And so while this looked to me to be a difficult game for Alabama as of last August. Now, I don't see it that way unless something drastic has changed in Tallahassee, which is kind of hard to believe. Still in week one. Those are week one games. Still in week one. Virginia Tech and South Carolina will play in Atlanta. Virginia Tech is an interesting case because if you look at them on paper, last year you go, okay, 6-7, not great. And I would agree, Virginia Tech was not great last year, and 6-7 is representative of that in a very mediocre ACC. But you realize every one of their 6 wins was by double digits. All of them. Every win was by double digits. Here are their losses. Overtime to Vanderbilt. Didn't look as bad 3 months later, but overtime to Vanderbilt. Lost by 3 to Rutgers. You shouldn't lose to Rutgers anyway. Lost by 3. Overtime against Syracuse. Had a pretty good quarterback, McCoy, losing overtime. Lost by 3 to Duke. Shouldn't lose to Duke, but it's 3. And then lost by 10 to Clemson. Like, they were in all their losses and blew out all their wins. So, I don't think Brent Key's a great coach. I think that program has fallen off a cliff since Frank Beamer had it going for 20 years. But I also am not ready to tell South Carolina, hey, y'all are way better than Virginia Tech. You'll just roll out of bed and beat them. I'm not ready to say that. I think that's a fascinating game. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that was a one-score game in the fourth quarter. And then still in week one, you've got Tennessee and Syracuse. Now, Syracuse could be in a little bit of a rebuild, but I think Tennessee is in a little bit of a rebuild. I don't like Tennessee on paper. I talked about this in Atlanta on 2 different occasions. You lose the bulk of that offensive line that paved the way for the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. You only have Lance Hurd back, and he didn't have a great year. So your running game is completely rehauled. And oh, by the way, you lose Squirrel White. He's gone. You lose Brew McCoy. He's gone. And then Nico held you hostage and left. So the offense is just completely new. And what I thought at one point was a Josh Heupel offense that was just going to create great play all the time. Once we watched Hendon Hooker, I realize now, Hendon Hooker was awesome. Joe Milton, not awesome. Nico Imalavic, not awesome. Joey Aguilar, probably not awesome. I got real concerns about Tennessee scoring. Their defense is going to be good. They were awesome last year. You returned basically the whole secondary, and that includes Jermod McCoy, who's probably the best cover guy in the league. And then you've got a couple guys back on the defensive front that should help. I think they'll be good on defense. I'm worried about the offense. And I think they'll beat Syracuse in Atlanta, but it's not a given at this point. So that's like an impressive week one slate for the SEC outside of LSU and Clemson, which I'm not here to talk about right now. The other team I want to talk about is Notre Dame briefly because they have an impact on the SEC twofold. A&M goes to South Bend, and Notre Dame comes to Fayetteville into the South. And I think Notre Dame is going to be pretty good again. I realize that you lose your quarterback, but I watched Notre Dame play last year, and I watched the offense that they run, and I'm like, I don't know how they ever score aside from handing the ball to Jeremiah Love, who is probably the best running back in the country. But I don't feel like they're having to change the guard at quarterback is a big deal because I don't think last year's quarterback played very well. So I think Notre Dame's going to be good because I think Marcus Freeman's always going to field a good defense. It may not be quite as good as it was last year, but it's going to be good. The question is their defense ready for Texas A&M to go to South Bend and hand the ball off to 2 really talented running backs 43 times? Because I think that's what's coming. I think A&M is going to try to run the ball 50 times in South Bend between Marcel Reed keepers, Le'Veon Moss, and the 2 guys they've got behind him. I think A&M is going to run the ball a ton in that game. And that gives them a chance to win because I think Mike Elko's defense is going to be pretty good as well. I don't think Arkansas has got the muscle to stand up to Notre Dame, but I'll be watching. That's one of those games that Sam Pittman needs to do what he did last year against Tennessee to save his job again. Because really, if you look at last year, he only saved his job because of the Tennessee game. If they don't win that game, which they were trailing late, if they don't win that game, he probably isn't coaching there anymore because there would be no positives to lean on from last year other than routing Mississippi State. And that's just not something that's going to save your job. So is that one game where Arkansas at home can rise up? I doubt it, but Taylor Green is dangerous in that way. So I think that this rule that the SEC has put in that has required all their schools to play this Power 5 non-conference game has created interesting matchups. Y'all know my feeling on LSU going to Clemson. I don't like it. But when it's not my team and I can just sit back and watch, I think it's fascinating. Taylor, you're kind of listening to me go off on this tangent here, but like outside of Texas, Ohio State, which is obviously great, is there one of those games that I'm talking about that you're like, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah, Notre Dame, Miami, for all the reasons you just mentioned. I mean, you look at some of these polls, Notre Dame's a top 5 team in the country, according to these polls. I disagree with that adamantly. I do not think they're a top 5 team in the country, but like you said, that opens up things because how good is Notre Dame going to do with the whole, Texas Tech or Texas A&M thing as well. And then, they have Miami as well. Those are 2 tough out-of-conference games. Like, Notre Dame's going to have a lot going on early in the season. They're going to be tested right out of the gate.
There's some more good ones. Like, Michigan's got to go to Oklahoma. That's
so week
interesting.
2, that's my favorite game, week 2.
Florida goes to Miami, which is interesting. I think that's a game last year that looked like it was going to be Billy Napier's death knell. I mean, that was the opener last year. Cam Ward went in there, threw for $1 billion. Graham Mertz turned the ball over, and you're looking at a Florida team that got run out of the swamp by Miami. Now it's a whole new Miami team, but they've bought a bunch of new talent. They brought in Carson back to throw it around a little bit. That's in Miami this time, and it's in week 4, not week 1. That's interesting, too. It'll be after Florida comes to Tiger Stadium. So just some games to keep an eye on in the Southeastern Conference as we get into September that I find to be really, really fascinating. The ones we talked about there, all of them in week number 1. All right, we'll step aside. The Saints have made some roster moves as they're currently on the practice field with the Rams. We'll talk about those next.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Back here on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, presented by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Saints have made a roster move today. This has become kind of commonplace over the last couple of weeks. They have waived quarterback. Reading up now. They've waived Hunter Deckers, which they've done a couple of times, and they signed Jeremiah Martin, who is a 6'4", 265-pound defensive end. Jeremiah Martin is a bit of a journeyman in the NFL to this point. He's bounced around a little bit after playing his college football at Washington and Texas A&M. He spent time at a couple of different stops in the NFL without really playing any in games. But he's been in the league for a couple of years. He's played, obviously, in the UFL as well. The Saints worked out 3 different defensive ends: Amari Barno, Jeremiah Martin, who they signed, and then O'Shane Ziminis. And I think all of this is a little bit of foreshadowing for one specific player on the Saint roster, and that is Isaiah Foskey. The Saints have made the decision to, as I mentioned, sign Jeremiah Martin. That doesn't mean they're going to part ways immediately with Isaiah Foskey, but you just have to read the writing on the wall. Foskey is no longer a super young player. They have gotten 2 different coaching staffs have gotten a look at him. And Foskey played 44 defensive snaps in the preseason opener. If you look at the ESPN box score, he is credited with nothing in 44 snaps. Nothing in 44 snaps. If you look at Pro Football Focus, They credit him with 1 missed tackle and 1 assisted tackle in 44 snaps. If you look at his defensive grade per Pro Football Focus against the Chargers, and you realize when you play 44 snaps, how few of those are against first-team offensive line players. You're going against backups and guys that are going to get cut. He graded a 40 overall in that game on Sunday afternoon. 40. Whether you think Pro Football Focus is an incredible tool or a waste of time, 40 is a loud grade. And here is something that makes it louder. There were 29 Saints defenders that graded better than Isaiah Foskey on Sunday. 29 guys that had a better grade. You may think that he should have graded a 20 or that he should have graded a 60. But either way, when you consider him relative to his peers, when you consider the stat sheet, when you consider the opposition, when you consider the third year in the league, this is pretty clear at this point. This is not a guy that can help you at all. And if they were truly just bringing in 3 edge rushers to sign and then immediately cut Foskey, well, that's what they would have done, and that's not what they're doing. And I'm not suggesting they've signed Jeremiah Martin, who's a game changer defensively. He's a guy that is played in lesser leagues in the NFL, more than he's played in the NFL. But I think it's obvious that the Saints were giving Foskey an opportunity, and I think it's obvious that they're exploring other options. They don't need Isaiah Foskey's position to be a huge impact on this team as it's currently constituted. You've got Chase Young, you've got Carl Granderson, you've got Cam Jordan. That's 3 guys you know you can trust as long as they're healthy to play the run, to rush the passer, to be solid players. So it's not like this is a starting player on your team. But you understand that Father Time is working on Cam Jordan, right? He's not going to be here forever. And the thought was that Isaiah Foskey was kind of the next man up, and that this year he would ascend to a more prominent role, and it's not happening. And I don't think it's going to happen. This is not a hot take. This is not breaking news. This is not anything other than a very, very obvious observation that Isaiah Foskey's time in New Orleans is coming to an end. And it's less about that specific pick and that specific player. It's more about the understanding that the organization cannot do this moving forward. The draft is a crapshoot. Some organizations are better at it than others. But it's a crapshoot. It's an inexact science that cannot be mastered or perfected. Every organization has great 6th-round picks and crappy 1st-round picks. All of them. But the Saints are in a position as an organization that they cannot afford to have any more Isaiah Foskeys in the next couple of years. They cannot afford to have any more Peyton Turners moving forward. They cannot afford to have high-end draft picks at premium positions that simply cannot help. You don't have to make the All-Pro team. You don't have to make the All-Pro team. You don't have to be a Pro Bowler. You've got to help. And it is very clear that Isaiah Foskey cannot help. And this is not just me talking. This is not just me reading a stat sheet. When Isaiah Foskey got to training camp, we were talking to Sharif Ishaq. We were talking to Luke Johnson. We were talking to people that are there every single day, and they're going, he's got a long way to go. And it's not a death sentence to your professional football career that in your first time in camp, things don't go well. This is a guy who was playing during the COVID year. That's a tough thing to do in college. It's a tough thing to do in development when everybody's sticking Q-tips up their nose as opposed to practicing accurately. You're not in meeting rooms. Like all these guys that were in their development phase, whether it was recruiting into college or playing in college or getting ready to start your NFL career, all these things, like that was a weird time for well over a year. But now there's not really an excuse that can be made. This is just a whiff by the Saints. And they're looking to restock the shelves at that position. They're looking to make sure they've got depth there. And it would be very, very, very surprising to me if on the last cut down day of camp, Isaiah Foskey made the roster or the practice squad. I just think there's too much evidence to support this. And the Saints have to make sure moving forward that the guys they draft, especially that high, in the first, second, third round, you're going to miss on 6th and 7th rounders. Those guys don't make teams very often. If you find a diamond in the rough, you find Marcus Colston, fan-freaking-tastic. You find Jari Evans, incredible. Middle rounds, late rounds, all that's great. But it generally doesn't work that way. But when you have first and second round picks and your franchise is in salary cap hell and your roster's as bad as anybody in the league, you cannot draft guys that cannot help. At least find yourself a depth piece. And they haven't done it with Foskey. Hopefully this draft class is different. You feel good about what some of those guys have put on tape early. You feel good about what you've got at left tackle. Kelvin Banks has done a good job. You feel good about what you've got with Kool-Aid McKinstry, who you took last year. You feel good right now about Tallahassee Fuaga. There are positive returns on Quincy Riley from this team. Hopefully Kendre Miller finds his stride here. Brzee has shown some flashes of real pass rusher from the interior. There are some things you've done well here, but you've got to avoid the Isaiah Foskeys and the Peyton Turners moving forward. This is a sunk cost. This is a guy that's going to be moved on from. And that's a big bummer, just 2 full seasons into his career. But when you look at who the Saints are working out, what they're bringing in, what Foskey did in the preseason, what he's done for 2 years, what Pro Football Focus says, what the people that cover the Saints say, what the statistics say, what the front office is telling you with their actions, this is coming to an end. And that's a bummer, but it's caution. You can't have that happen again. And that's not an indictment on Kellen Moore and his staff, but certainly on Ireland, Loomis, that crew. This is a whiff, and those set you back significantly. And if you continue to do this, you're going to have a hard time digging out of this hole at the bottom of the sport. Just is what it is. Saints are on the practice field right now with the Rams. We'll get a report from Luke Johnson hopefully tomorrow, depending on his travel schedule. Ross Jackson's out there as well. You can find his work at LouisianaSports.net. He helped report this news a little bit earlier with that news that they're bringing in some help at end, and he'll be coming back tomorrow as the Saints get ready for Jacksonville on Sunday. We'll certainly preview that game coming up tomorrow, as it looks like Tyler Shook may get his opportunity to start that game. They haven't announced that yet, but he's gotten a lot of first-team reps over the last 2 days. You read the practice reports on LouisianaSports.net and hear what some of the folks are saying out there in Southern California. So, Isaiah Foskey, I think his time is just about done. We'll move on from the Saints here. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms. Tell you more about them as we move forward. 30 minutes left to go here on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. I tell you Sean's story all the time. This was a labor of love for him. He just had too many questions about beef industry, wasn't satisfied with the quality he was purchasing weekly, and said, hey, I'm going to do something about this. And he had some land, had farms, started dealing with the technology that was raising cattle, and the results he's gotten over the years have been so amazing that he's decided to share that with the Baton Rouge community, and now it's turned into a business. And it's a process that they've refined that is a 3-year journey for all their cattle. And they mate genetically superior animals, raise them on grass, they finish them on grain. They're dry aged 35 to 45 days, and this is not a guessing game with them. It's remarkable consistency. I've talked to you about intramuscular fat scores with beef. If you go to a restaurant and they've got select beef, that's 0 to 3 on the IMF chart. If it's 4 to 8, you're talking about choice, which you hear all the time, choice Angus beef. Prime is what you get at the fine dining restaurants, the best of the best. And that starts at 8 or 9 on the scale, right? Sean had a vet come out and do ultrasounds on his animals. 9 is prime, right? Here's some of the scores they got on the farm right now. 20.14, 19.92, 17.75, 17.03, 17.89, 15.89, 15.43. It's not just like, one animal they got that's no, this is a consistent process that yields these kind of results time and time and time again. If you would like your freezer to be full of prime Angus beef for your ground beef that you use for your burgers, whatever the case may be, for your ribeyes, fillets, you're going to be watching the Tigers, watching the Saints, putting a steak on the grill. You want it to be prime. You want it to be fantastic. Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef can do that for you. All you got to do is call Sean. Say, Sean, I heard about this on Hunt's show. I'd like to talk to you about it. Go up to the farm. You can actually see what you're buying. And when you bring that beef home, you can know it's got one DNA. Sometimes you purchase 2 pounds of ground beef, wherever it is that you purchase your beef, there could be hundreds, thousands of DNAs in that mass-produced ground beef, not from Sagrera Farms. So call Sean. It's 225, obviously, right here in Baton Rouge, 719-1723. 719-1723. For the finest in Angus beef, Sagrera Farms. They bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. I saw something on the internet yesterday that piqued my interest. Because as well as I think the DBs have played in LSU's camp, and that has been a far, far cry from the last 2 years. Trust me. I haven't seen a lot of interceptions being made. Every once in a while, like Harold Perkins got one on Nussmeier in a 7-on-7 period, kind of baited into it over the middle. But I haven't seen a lot of interceptions. Saw one on LSU's Twitter handle yesterday, not when we were in person, from DJ Pickett. And his role on this team fascinates me because I think it unlocks a lot of different things if it works out. You look at a lot of different guys on this roster, I can tell you what their role is going to be. I know what Weeks' role is going to be. I know what Harold Perkins' role is going to be. I know what Jack Pyburn's going to be asked to do or Caden Durham's going to be asked to do. I know Chris Hilton's role on this team. I'm getting to a point where I know what A.J. Halsey's role on this team is going to be. I know what they're going to use Jacoby and Guillory for. There are so many guys that I feel very comfortable in their roles. Pickett, I don't. I don't know what to make of him because he rarely runs with the ones. That's almost always Ashton Stamps and Mansour Delane. I don't know if he could potentially be in there in nickel packages or if they're just going to leave Perkins out there or if it means something different like, they bring a safety down like Cooley and put Spears or Jordan Gilbert back there. I don't know if Jordan Gilbert moves in. Like, I'm not certain the nickel and dime looks because we see them at practice, but we see rotations in them. And like my kind of thought in the summer when I was thinking about what the LSU secondary could look like before I ever watched them in practice in action, I was like, Pickett seems like he could maybe play on the outside, and that might kick Delane or Stamps down inside where you've got a guy that can cover that's down there, and that Delane's not afraid to tackle and Stamps isn't either. I don't know if I want Pickett playing in there. I don't know if he's ready to tackle. He's just skinny. He's not, in terms of his weight, he's like 190, 195 pounds, which is not skinny until you see he's 6'5", and you're like, oh, that he is skinny. And so if he can come on and change the rotation of that defense, it could be a big, big deal. And I didn't get a good feel for what Pickett was early in camp for one very obvious reason. He was working against Chris Hilton in every rep, all of them. Well, nobody's going to look very good working against Chris Hilton every rep. Nobody on that field wants to run with him. And, oh, by the way, he's 4 years older than DJ Pickett. So I didn't get a great sense for that. But since that time where those one-on-ones have been fewer and far between and he's kind of matched up with some other guys, he's been really physical and he's made some plays. We went out there on Monday to practice, and I told you this after practice, but they threw at him in the red zone 3 or 4 different times, and none of them were completed. Now, I would contend that probably 2 of them were pass interference, but he was there, and he's being physical. He's not scared of contact. He's not shying away from the contact, and he's in position to make a play on the man and the ball. Is he a little bit too physical at times? Maybe, but I'll take that. That's the first step to being in position in a good corner. But you figure that DJ Pickett is in the same conversation as some of the best cornerback recruits that LSU has ever signed. That's Patrick Peterson. That's Derek Stingley. That's Eli Ricks. That's Kevin Tolliver. That's Christian Fulton. That's all these guys. And they had varying degrees of success at LSU, but they were a top 2 or 3 cornerback in the country, which is what Pickett is. I just didn't know as of August 1st, like, is this guy ready to go out there and physically mix it up? And I know he will against Louisiana Tech in week 2, and I know he will against Southeastern in week 4. And I know that over time, guys grow up. But, like, Eli Ricks had a pick 6 in his first game. No, never mind. That was his first year against Florida. He had a big play against Mississippi State in that first game, not a pick 6. But he was ready to go. Stingley was ready to go. Patrick Peterson was ready to go. Morris Claiborne was just about ready to go. Tre'Davious White started about 4 games into his first year. And those are the guys we're talking about with Pickett. And I see him make a play on the ball in that Twitter video, and I'm like, all right, they're starting to see some things. And you've got 2 very veteran, solidified corners in Stamps and Delane on the outside. But I'm just curious how much better LSU's defense can be if Pickett comes onto the field. Whether that moves Delane or Stamps down, or Pickett goes down, or Perkins moves up to the line of scrimmage and Pickett plays there. Like, I'm not sure. That's beyond my level of expertise and understanding with this team to this point, but I'm excited for it because I'm looking at this team as a potential championship caliber team. I'm looking at this team that can compete for the SEC championship, compete to get into the playoff, and compete to make a run in that playoff. And for that to happen, you've got to have some guys develop and hit their ceilings. And the ceiling for Pickett is astronomical. And if he can come in and show out and make plays on the ball and not be pushed around and not be overwhelmed by the speed and be ready to go, it makes LSU a lot better. And I think the staff knew this. I think they knew this. And that's why Corey Raymond had him line up across from Chris Hilton for 2 weeks straight. Because that is baptism by fire. That is figuring things out really quickly. Sink or swim, kid. And it feels like he's swimming right now because he's getting better. He's making more plays on the ball. And that's an exciting, exciting thing. DBU needs badly to resurrect because it has been gone for a few years. Pickett is such a big piece of that if it can work out. And right now, kind of feels like you're trending in the right direction with him, especially with the play he made yesterday on the football for an interception. So we'll see him again tomorrow. We'll see all the LSU team tomorrow. Certainly have a practice report up on LouisianaSports.net, and we'll be talking about it on tomorrow's show, first with Preston and then my practice report to follow. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to the weekend. We're getting closer to it. We'll take a step aside, take one more time out, and then come back and close out this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
I'm super excited to get out to LeBare's tonight. Every year, I'm fortunate, or the last 4 years, I've been fortunate to MC the Q&A portion of Baton Rouge LSU Alumni Association, Baton Rouge chapter's annual kickoff to the school year. Get a chance to talk to a number of LSU coaches. I see a lot of great people. It's been inside Tiger Stadium the last few years, but it'll be at LeBare's tonight. I have a chance to talk to Matt McMahon. I have a chance to talk to Kyle Williams from LSU football, obviously, and very much looking forward to that. It's one of those, like, you check these boxes as you get closer and closer to football season, and like kind of starts with SEC Media Days, and you check that box, and then you come back and you see, okay, you get fall camp reporting, okay, maybe like Hard Knocks launches, you get the first NFL preseason game, and this is one for me that kind of gets the blood flowing a little bit. To get ready to go for another great year at LSU. And I'm going to talk a little bit before I talk to the coaches about just what a heater LSU is on. It's phenomenal. The last 6 years here in Baton Rouge, between Heisman trophies and national championships and all-star game starts and number 1 draft picks and everything that LSU has accomplished on the field and off the field in athletics over the last 6 years has been great, and this is a night where we can celebrate that. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there tonight. If you're going to be out there tonight as part of the Baton Rouge Alumni Association chapter, then looking forward to seeing you, and we'll get have some good times out there at LeBare's this evening. I'll kind of give a report on it tomorrow. We should have a lot to do on tomorrow's show. We'll have Preston Guy Hopefully, you can have Luke Johnson talking Saints. We'll certainly preview Saints in Jacksonville. We get to watch LSU practice tomorrow. I think Brian Kelly speaks as well. So a lot of content coming up tomorrow. And then when we get to next week, like it is week 0. That doesn't just absolutely send me over the moon. A lot of these week 0 games. I think we got Farmageddon coming up in week 0 next week. But you're knocking on the door of getting there. I think for a lot of people in that checklist I was just rattling off, sending the kids to school for the first time is on that checklist. That happened for a lot of folks over the last week. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be a big day in the Palmer house. Where we're going to have Meyer's first ever organized sports practice. The Shark Dogs elite pre-K 3 soccer team. We're going to hit the practice field today. Turns out there's a heat advisory apparently, so the 3-year-olds can't run around with a soccer ball for 40 minutes. So he's going to be super bummed. However, I do have sources inside the Palmer house that indicate a new soccer ball has been purchased today. Could be a big afternoon in the Palmer house if my sources are correct. And I think they are based on the picture I received in the credit card statement. So it sounds like a soccer ball was purchased. So no practice for the Shark Dogs today, but could be a big weekend of soccer in the Palmer house. So let's rock and roll with some Take It or Leave It.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Presented to you by Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer, crafted by America's oldest brewery. Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer. If it's a heat advisory out here, that means you need something cold to drink, right? Flight by Yingling, built for these Baton Rouge and South Louisiana summers, whether you're on the grill, at the lake, at the pool, on the golf course, tailgating. You want a light beer, 95 calories, 2.6 carbs. Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer. Check it out wherever you purchase your weekend beers. All right, Taylor?
So recently, Derek Nix, the Auburn offensive coordinator, explained that he is going to be calling first down plays, and it sounds like head coach Hugh Freeze will be the second down play caller, and then Kent Austin is their third down play caller. So first, second, and third down, all different coaches calling those plays. Hugh Freeze will be fired next season. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it. I think they're going to be a little bit better this year.
Leave it alone.
I think this is weird to say, but it's probably true. I think Saban leaving and Kalen DeBoer kind of falling flat last year helps Hugh's case. If DeBoer loses 2 or 3 more this year and doesn't make any noise in the playoff, I think that the pressure eases at Auburn. That was such a pressure cooker with Kirby and Nick just doing absurd things, and then Auburn having to play those two in November every year and kind of comparing themselves to them. I think Hugh Freeze is a good coach. I think he's a little bit squirrely to talk to on the microphone, but I think he'll win a little bit more games. They've got more talent this year. I don't know if Jackson Arnold's the dude. He's probably better than Peyton Thorne, but I don't think he's going to get fired imminently. I think it's ridiculous to have 3 different coaches calling 3 different downs. I've often told this story. Have you heard my story about the 3rd and 17 in Austin?
No, I would love to.
I was privy to some information on that. Steve Ensminger was the offensive coordinator, and obviously they bring in Joe Brady to be the spread offense guy, and he was in charge of 3rd down concepts. Well, here's what happened. You get to 3rd and 17, and LSU, Ed Ogeron's on the headset, and he goes, okay, it's 3rd and 17, it's the 4th quarter, but we want to try to get a first down, which that's one decision you have to make on 3rd and 17. Sometimes you punt and run the draw. Well, I guess I shouldn't say punt because you don't do that literally. That was a euphemism. Sometimes you run the draw and then literally punt. Sometimes you try to get 17 yards. Ogeron says, let's get 17 yards. Okay, so Brady's in charge at that point of coming up with the play design. He comes up with the play design. This is what they want to run. Ensminger, who's calling the play to Burrow in the huddle, says, okay, I know what this defensive coordinator is going to do. He's going to blitz. This play concept calls for Clyde to leak out of the backfield. I need Clyde in. So he called the play that Brady called, but he told Burrow, keep Clyde in. So when Burrow calls the play and says, Clyde, you stay in, whatever the terminology was that for. And if you go back and watch 3rd and 17, they blitz, Clyde stonewalls it, Burrow steps up and hits Jefferson. So you can have multiple cooks in the kitchen. You can have Ogeron say, we're trying to get this. Brady say, here's the play. Ensminger says, and we need to do this. But we can't have 3 guys calling different plays 3 in a row. Like that we've overstepped our bounds at that point.
Apparently, according to this article from AL.com, this is not much different than what they did a year ago, though. So the only difference is Derek Nix did not call first downs last year. He's calling first downs this year. Yeah, it didn't work out well.
And apparently, as it stands, is what the report says, that no matter what happens, Hugh Freeze can get on the headset and say, no, we're doing this, which makes sense. I always thought that great offensive coaches need to be calling plays, but I understand the feeling that they've got to babysit now and make sure kids don't go in the transfer portal. So getting ready to game plan and call plays is maybe a little bit more than needs to be on their plate. I get that.
All right, I got one more for you.
Yes.
So due to injury, Shedeur Sanders had to start over the weekend because Cleveland basically had no quarterbacks left. Well, yesterday he suffered an oblique injury, and he's not going to play this weekend. The Cleveland Browns will never get their quarterback situation figured out. Take it or leave it.
Leave it.
Leave it alone.
Joe Flacco, baby. He's the guy. He's healthy.
The only one that's healthy is the 41-year-old.
Give him the rock. Let him spin it. Super Bowl champ, Browns. I heard Hester talking about this earlier today. They are going to need to get that old Browns jersey with all the quarterbacks out. They got to get that thing back out because they're going to hit at least 2 this year, right?
Yeah.
And you got to think they're going to add 2 names to that this year.
I think it's out of room.
No, we got to make room. It's a famous piece of sports memorabilia. The Browns aren't going to win the Super Bowl anytime soon. They got to have the jersey. That's like the most redeeming quality of the whole organization is they've got this ridiculous jersey with 5,000 quarterbacks on it. None of them are any good. So add it to Tim Couch's name and put the 2 more on there. Joe Flacco. All right. That's it for our Thursday edition, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. If you missed any of the show, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. You can search Hunt Palmer Show for your Saints content, Hunt on Saints. For your LSU content, Hunt on LSU. Of course, LouisianaSports.net as well. Big show coming up tomorrow. Very excited for it. If you're coming out to the Bears tonight, look forward to seeing you. Matt's going to drive you home next on After Further Review. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place for a Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show right here on the Capital City's leader for sports talk, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.